It's time for Cash Plays, where we turn bustos into robustos. Brought to you by Stack'emCoaching.com. Rethink Poker. And now, your hosts, John Kim and Joe Tehan.
Hey, what's going on, guys? This is John Kim with my co-host, Joe Tehan.
Hey, guys.
I was just told I have some connection problems, but I'm trying to work on that, and I'll get that fixed for next time. So,
what's new, JK?
if my video cuts in and out, I apologize.
I mean, you make all this money playing poker, you can't get good internet.
I actually have, believe it or not, I have two different internet connections. For internet players, it's wise to get two different connections in case one goes down, but unfortunately, I guess I have the weaker of the two connected.
Oh, for all the listeners, by the way, I've heard this one about for the last when I used to go over your house and play Sunday tournaments, and we'd be in like some major tournaments, and you'd be like, "Oh, I have the best internet, and I have a backup system," and blah blah blah.
Well, that's like, true.
I can't tell you how many times we've like timed out and like big pots or big like deep in Sunday tournaments, and we're like, JK, we'll get this internet fixed.
The over-under is like 3 times that happened.
Multiple. So. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, my main connection, I was told, is kind of weak, so I'll get that fixed for next time. And this is Cash Plays. This is our 7th episode, I think. And I want to thank all you guys for listening in on the show, and I hope all our listeners get something out of it to improve their cash games or even their tournament play. And it's brought to you by Stack'emCoaching.com. It's the site where Joe and I coach at and train other people and students, and it's a subscription site, and you can use promo code QuadJax82 to subscribe and improve your play. With the World Series of Poker around the corner, go register and improve your live game to capitalize on all the cash games and tournaments this summer. Are you excited about the World Series, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really gone through my schedule yet. I don't know. In the past, I never really played too many PLO tournaments, and I know kind of today we're going to be talking about PLO. We're going to have a PLO guy come on, and I don't know how many PLO events I'm going to play this summer, but I might play a few more than I used to. I never used to play any of them. Or I played the occasional PLO 8 tournament, but I think I might play a few more this year, so I'm kind of excited about that, but I haven't quite written out my schedule yet.
Yeah, I haven't really decided what I want to do. I've always neglected the cash games during the World Series, just played too many tournaments. So, and I feel like I'm kind of burning money in a way. I think you know what I'm talking about, Joe. Just because, like, if you're a great cash game player, you should expect to do better than in tournaments, no matter.
I think you're right. The reason I got into tournaments, maybe I feel like I'm giving up a little bit by not playing cash games when I think I should be. But, I mean, not everything, I guess, is about making, like, the most money. I mean, I guess it is in poker, but...
Of course it is in poker.
Yeah, but it gets to a point where it's like, okay, I really enjoy the rush of playing tournaments. Like, I really kind of... this is, like, the biggest stage in the world for tournaments. Why not, like... play with playing like the biggest tournaments in the world. So part of that was why I did it.
I mean, if you're looking for fame and glory, then for sure you should play as many World Series.
Yeah, but I wasn't looking for fame and glory. I was kind of, I enjoyed the rush of these major tournaments. Like, it's an adrenaline rush, and I loved it.
Right. So I'm still undecided. Also, I don't know if you've heard, but 2+2 has been down for close to a week now.
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it was hacked. So yeah, if people out there want to go to a forum or want to learn some more poker, we have our forums at Stack'em Coaching, where we discuss hands. We even have a BBV section, brags, beats, and variants. I know I have a lot of those. Joe probably only qualifies for brags, doesn't get many beats.
Dude, yeah.
And other stuff to fill in your daily cravings that people are missing out on from 2+2 being down. And also, everything's free in the forums to browse, so I really have no excuse to go check it out. And every once in a while, Joe Tehan posts there too. So
I'm always on the forums. I really like going on our forums and talking about some hands. It's a good group of guys on there that are, always looking it over, discussing hands and stuff. So, yeah, check out the forums and stack them for sure.
yeah. All right. Well, actually, before we get into some real poker content, I wanted to bring on Nick really quick. So we're just going to take a real quick break and bring on our own Nick DiVella. He played a couple of interesting 10-20 hands this past week. He blogged about it even, but I want him on to explain it in his own words. So we'll be right back after this quick break.
What's up?
All right. We're back with Nick DiVella.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Nick.
What's up? I wanted to
Nick,
say,
this is horrible, man. Like, not only does he have to, suffer through it, now we got to bring him on Cash Plays to, talk about
I know.
it. I feel so bad.
I was on Poker News with Christy Arnett. I've gotten maybe a little too much attention for this hand.
well, I mean, I asked you beforehand. I said if you're totally uncomfortable talking about it, which I would
that's
totally
fine.
understand. I have to give you props, though. I mean,
I
for you to,
deserve to be punished for it.
I mean, if I made a play that bad, I'd probably keep it to myself. All right, well, let's go over this hand. 10-20, no limit. You take over.
Okay, so we're playing seven-handed. I just get there, and I guess the word on the street is that this game is playing higher than normal, and there's been some pretty crazy hands. It's taken about a half hour for them to play 4 hands. That's how big the pots are. That's how long it takes to count down the money, and so forth. So this one fish is away from the table, and I want to have him covered. So I take out what I have in front of me in my pocket, which is like 13,000, and there's another random, which I later find out is, I guess, an online legend. You said, JK, 0 to lose.
Yeah.
JK calls everyone a legend, but I know 0 to lose. I played a lot of a decent amount of Six Max online. I've gotten into
to me this was just an average guy. He was involved in these big pots, and I heard some of his hands. So that's my perception of the game, that it was just playing really big. Anyways, 0 to lose raises to 80 under the gun. I make it 280 under the gun plus 1 or 2 with kings, and then this really bad fish who's back at the table now calls, and then 0 to lose makes it 1600. So we're 13K deep. This is deeper than I've ever played before. This is more money than I've ever played before, and I kind of froze up. I didn't exactly know what to do. I couldn't just fold. Hands too strong, seven-handed, especially in this game. I didn't feel like 3-betting or 4-betting. No, that'd be a 5-bet. It'd be a 5. I didn't feel like 5-betting to like 3,500 and folding to a shove, and I didn't feel like 5-betting to 3,500 and calling a shove.
Why not? I'm just curious.
It's something that I've never been really put in that situation before, because I've never played this deep, and it's just something that I've just never really encountered, and I kind of just froze up and didn't know what to do.
Plus, I think when it comes to actually calling the shove, people are going to be like, oh wow, if the guy actually does shove and he turns over aces, everyone's going to be like, what a horrible call. What are you doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? So people don't want to
zero.
Yeah, you don't want to look like you made a horrible call. So it's like, okay, I can make a bad shove that's different.
Yeah, and I didn't really want to call because I felt that there was a good chance that the fish calls behind and I'd be squeezed in the middle post flop. And I mean, there's a really good chance that I'm not folding my hand anyways post flop. I mean, even if I realize that it doesn't make sense. This was my thinking during the hand. I understand that calling is the best play, but I just during the hand. When you're watching a hand or you hear a hand, it's a lot clearer than when you're actually in the hand. I clearly messed up, and I shoved all in for 13,000. So yeah, I went from 1,600 to 13,000, and I knew at the time that the only thing that would call me was aces, but I couldn't control my hand. My hand just put the money in, and I just totally messed up.
Okay, so you had kings as his hand because a couple of people are asking what you had. So yeah, two kings. I'm not here to criticize you, Nick, because I understand people can have those mental lapses. I mean, I've had them, probably not to that extent, but I mean, you can have them. People, it happens in tournaments a lot too, where you just, for whatever reason, do something really stupid, and afterwards you just knock yourself over the head, like, why did I do that? And you end up busting out of a tournament. So, we all go through that. Um, I said I wasn't going to criticize you, but I think I have to actually.
I mean,
A couple of
the
things,
hardest
yeah.
the hardest thing is like there's no real way to like lose that much money and feel good about it. Like there's no lesson. Yeah, you can try to learn a lesson for next time, but it's gonna sting for a while. Like,
Well, I
And
mean, I just want.
it actually didn't sting too bad. I mean, yeah, it was like a little bit of a shock, but it was more the play that I dwelled on.
yeah,
I instantly went back and I reloaded for another 10,000 because I thought the game was so great, and I won back like 4,000 in like 20 minutes. I just overbet. I think I told JK a couple hands where I overbet the pot on turn and river or something, and got called.
But yeah, by the whale. I'm just saying this to instruct, like, to help out the listeners, to give some advice. So not necessarily as a means of like rehashing what you said, but your statement that you shoved because you didn't want the fish to call behind you. That's just completely wrong. You want to
Right.
call and you want the fish to come in. That's the whole point. That's why you're in that game covering. That's why you bought in that deep, to cover them. You don't want to blow them out of the hand. So I think that was like the biggest flaw in one of those things you were saying. So other than that, it's just the whatever. Like,
yeah,
I totally
I think
agree. It was just in hand that was just my thinking, and it was good, Joe.
yeah, I think one important lesson to learn is like it doesn't matter. Um, it doesn't matter who the player is. Like people kind of give me hand histories about, oh, this guy's so bad and blah blah blah. Like, at some point it just gets to be like, okay, I want to be a little more sure. I want to be a little more confident when I'm getting in this much money. Like even if you think the guy's super loose, like he has just as good of a chance of getting dealt two aces as anyone else. So I think that's like kind of important to know. Like people kind of think that, oh, this guy's an idiot, like he doesn't know what he's doing, like he could have anything here. So I'm not afraid to get it in. But at some point when it gets really deep, it's just like, I don't want to get it in. I'd rather just call.
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think if we've beat it through his head, and
Yeah,
Nick
yeah.
knows also that, I mean, we could only tell him like you effed up so many times. So
I
it's funny
actually got I actually got like 30 followers in like a day and a half from posting my blog, and I think everybody wants to know where I'm playing each night.
yeah. I was just gonna say, this is just jokingly. I was gonna tell Joe, like, before when I used to do cash plays with Jeremiah, I used to always joke to Jeremiah like he was a total donkey and make snide remarks about how bad he played poker. And there's some, I don't want to say there was some truth to that, but he wasn't at our level. I mean, he was competent, but it was just funny. So I was just thinking, like, I need someone I can pick on that, always joke about how bad he plays poker. So I want to do it with Joe, but Joe never like loses ever. So
So that's gonna be
Dude, I
me.
lose
Don't
plenty.
make
it's,
it me.
it's
I don't
hard
want
to
it to
pick
be
on
me.
Joe when he never loses. So yeah, you might be my new
Oh my god.
Yeah, Nick
punching
never really loses either, from what I
I'm
hear. I
kidding.
mean,
No,
Yeah, I don't
Nick,
give
you're
out
not
too
a
many
good target
gifts. This is
either.
my one in like 2 years
Yeah.
for a
No,
big
I know.
blow.
Like I said, don't take it personal. This is all just for fun and humor. But yeah, I can't really pick on you either because from what I know, you're like you crush 2-5, you crush 5-10. You're like one of the biggest winner at
Nick,
those stakes around
I'll
town.
give you
So
a very similar hand. This just kind of happened to me recently. This is one of the maybe about 2 months ago, but I was playing in the card room where I play at, and me and a guy, we've kind of gotten into like a battle, and we were like 3,500 deep, so playing 5-10. So it's one guy limps, he raises to like 90 with two kings, and I make a pretty decent over raise to like 330 with aces, or 360 or something. It was pretty good size over raise, and everyone folds back to him, and he is 3,600 and or 3,400. He had 3,400, and he just jammed, and I had aces,
Yeah.
So, you're not the only one that did it. The reason I remember this hand is because we ran it twice, kings versus aces, and he flopped a king on both boards.
Joe just won.
He was
No,
like
no.
telling that beat story.
No, that's
Yeah, he
one of
was
my
like-
most memorable. But I
He was
mean,
looking
like,
for an excuse to tell us one of his worst beats ever.
no, it was
Oh,
one
yeah,
of my
aces
most
and kings ran it twice
memorable.
last month's run.
But I mean, he got in like what 350 big blinds, like when there's better ways of getting in that much,
Yeah, I got in 650.
Yeah,
Oh my
I'll share
God.
my personal experience. I got in. This is online. My full tilt heyday, full tilt poker when everything was going well. 510 full ring. I mean, I was playing a lot of six max and some full rings. And button, like a standard loose player, opens to whatever 25 or 30. And I probably make it like 100, 110 with ace king. And we're 3K deep. And you start with 1K. So I was winning, he was winning. And he makes it like 250. I make it like 700. I don't remember how the 5-6 betting went, but all I know is I got in 3K pre with ace king. And after I got in 3K, I don't even have to see his hand. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like at 510 online, if you're getting in 200 big blinds, you're facing aces or kings like every time. I'm putting in 300 big blinds in a full ring online game too. So I mean, that's kind of similar. I mean, it's money wise not as much as you, but in terms of like relativeness, it's the same thing. After I put in 3,000, I'm like, what am I doing? And he showed aces, obviously. So yeah, it was kind of a similar moment where I kind of just, I don't know, in the heat of the moment, sometimes you do dumb things. That hasn't been something that hasn't really been discussed is why the good or great players excel is because they're very good in the heat of the moment, like at not making mistakes. And you see, and this is why a lot of amateurs, beginners, average players aren't making as much as they should, because at the moment, in the heat of the moment, they just freeze up, or even players that know what to do, they make mistakes because it's just in that heat of the moment. And I think, like, we should really think about making sure we make the right decision at the heat of the moment. And believe it or not, it's I don't want to keep referencing your hand there, but had you just taken a step back and just thought about things through, and instead of, I don't know, maybe it was instinctively you just shoved without thinking much or whatever. If you really thought about it for 2 minutes, I don't think you would have shoved 13K, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I wouldn't have shoved 3K with ace king, and the other guy, Joe's villain, wouldn't have shoved. Or I don't know, maybe it's just
It's hard though. It's hard getting in those situations. I mean, like sometimes, like I told you about the pot, I got in 12K with kings playing 10 and a quarter. But it all went in on the turn where the guy, I mean, he could have had aces. Like sometimes it's really, really, you get in tough spots. Remember the hand I told you about in Florida?
Yeah.
But yeah, you get in a lot of those tough spots where it's like, man, I really don't know what to do here. I know this guy can 3-bet me with like a super wide range of hands here, but I don't.
That's what I thought. I thought
get
his
it
bet
in.
sizing was a bit much too. I thought the 82, 82, 80 4-bet to 1600 was a bit much too. It didn't feel like aces to me.
I wouldn't have thought that. I would
Yeah.
think you guys are really deep, so he wants to make it big now. He's out of position, and he has the big villain who's really deep too. So
Right.
I'd probably do the same with aces, right, Joe?
Yeah.
And make a bigger 4-bet than normal.
Yeah, my hand. I'll briefly tell this one, but it was like limp for 25. This was a 10 and a quarter no limit game. Limp for 25. I made it 125 with kings. The button made it 375. And it's folded back to me, and I'm like 10, 11K deep. And it's like I couldn't call because I don't want to get in this much pre-flop, but it's like I have kings. Like, what the hell do I do, right? And I'm out of position against like a good young opponent. Like, I know this kid knows what he's doing. So it's like, man, I really don't know what to do here. So the other guy folded, and I just decided to 4-bet. I'm like, I got kings. I'm going to 4-bet. And I 4-bet pretty big. Like, I made it like 1,100 more, 1,000. Like, I think I made it like 1,350 or something. So like 1,000 more. which is like a big four bet because I don't want. I know like I think if he's three betting, like he's probably gonna call like a lot of my four bets in position. It's just gonna be so shitty for me, like to play the hand, and I just want to get it over with. So he called, and the flop was like queen five deuce. I bet 2K. He called, and I'm like, shit, I don't know what to do here. The turn was like a jack, I think, and I had like 7K left, and I'm just like, all right, you got me, right? I had like a pot-sized bet left, and I just shoved it in. Or I had maybe like 5,500 left.
I
So that's a
actually,
similar spot where I could have easily been stacking off there with kings. I mean, he ended up tanking forever and folding kings.
yeah, I actually thought about this hand when you told me, Joe, and I never really got back to you. I think that turns a check, probably a check fold.
Yeah.
What do you think, Nick?
I agree. I mean, I think. I mean, what is he calling with you on the flop? Even if he has jacks, he turned a jack. He's not calling you with tens. So it's either aces, kings, or top set. And
Yeah,
I think they had like 5,700, 5,800 left on the turn, like, or maybe.
Yeah, if you have a pot bet left, then I don't know. That's closer, I guess.
Yeah, but like I didn't know what to do. It's like,
I think overall, though, if you think about it, it's probably a check fold. Just because you're either chopping or losing. That's pretty much it. Like he's not gonna once it's a five bet, people don't get out of line. Even good players, especially deep, they're not. He's not gonna be floating you. I don't think. So I'd probably check fold. I don't think I told you that at the time. It turns out, the best possible scenario, you shoved and he folded the same hand. So, but yeah, it's either that or he's calling with pocket queens or pocket aces. So, right.
I mean,
and if he's floating you, it's better to check anyways. So the turn should always be a check, I think. If he's floating you, then you can decide to call. Because think about it, if he's probably going to fold ace queen if you bet the turn, and you let him shove with ace queen yourself, or if you think he has some bluffs in his range, you check call in. But if you shove, he's only calling with set of queens and pocket aces, and maybe kings. That's it, right? So your shove has like zero value.
I mean, at some point, like when you only have a pot-sized bet left, it's just like I kind of have to protect. I still have an overpair, and
Protect
I know,
what,
like
though?
relative value. It's not like and the way that pot was played out. I think it's. I mean, my relative value isn't all that great.
Yeah, it's terrible actually. Like I said, in a 4 or 5 bet pot when you're deep, even the best players aren't gonna go crazy. They're not gonna be floating you with like 7-8 there or whatever, or ace 10. I think they're just gonna fold on the
But
flop
like, what if he had like? I mean, who knows? Queen 10 suited, or I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe he's not floating there. I mean, there's some hands. Like I can't.
Yeah, if he has queen 10 suited, he's gonna check back the turn. So he's gonna just try to get to showdown cheaply. So if he shoves, then that's why I said I think it's a check fold on the turn. So I mean, is he really going to shove 5K with queen 10? I mean, obviously we don't know like the meta game leveling stuff that might have been going on at the time, but I'm just saying in a vacuum.
That was easier said than done. I don't know. I would just like the hell with it. I got king.
But that's exactly what I was talking about. It's just being in the heat of the moment, and you just like you just said, I have kings, I have an overpair, I'm just shoving, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I could easily be in Nick's spot right here, just telling.
Yeah, I mean, you're still like 20.
I could be talking about how
you're still 200 and
up.
some bigs deep on the turn, right?
Well, that's all relative, though. You can't really. I mean, technically, yeah, but like when the pot's so like inflated.
No, I mean, no, we couldn't talk about it by a stack to pot ratio. It's fine because Joe's stack to pot ratio is like 1 or 2, whatever. It's very small, so. Whatever, it's not like a big mistake from that perspective, from an SPR perspective to shove. But I just think once the pot's that bloated against a good player on a Queen Jack XX board, a 4-bet pot, I don't know. I don't think you're getting called by worse when you shove the turn. So, and I know you're saying you're betting to protect, but I think there's, I think more often like checking is a better play than shoving. So, what do you think, Nick? You haven't really said anything.
Yeah, I actually remember this hand. He told me this hand at his house, and I think I said check fold turn, or the shove on turn just didn't appeal to me for the same reasons that you said.
I mean, I'm not loving it by any means. I'm not loving it, right?
Yeah, but do you even like it a little bit?
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't see myself getting away from the hand. I don't see like.
I mean, that's the thing though. Once you put in whatever 2,500 at some point, and you don't want to fold for 5K when you have an overpair.
That's what happened. That was my thinking in my hand. I thought if I called 1,600 and he bets 3,000 on the flop,
Okay,
then
so now you guys are speaking in terms of like the money affecting your decision. Like, oh, I put in so much money, so I'm not going to fold. That's like how an amateur thinks.
Yeah, but it's still. I mean, it's still kings. It's not like we have nines on an 8-high board.
Yeah, but it's all relative strength. Like, it's there's a good possibility he has aces there. If you shove, he calls. You know he's always going to have aces. So it's just, yeah. I mean, I think it sounds like both of you guys are saying, well, I put in 1,600 or I put in 2,500, and I have kings. Therefore, I don't want to fold for 5K more or whatever. So, and that's definitely the wrong way to think about it.
Me and Joe are amateurs.
I'm not saying that. I'm just.
I don't know. In my situation, playing 7-handed in a game that's playing higher than normal. I mean, it's really tough to fold kings. Obviously, the way I did it was wrong. But if I call pre-flop and he bets 3,300 on the flop, like I'm just not going to give it to him. It's not something I can do.
Well, I mean, you can call and fold the turn, right?
Yeah, but again, it's like.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
So, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Now, again, same thing. You probably put in 5K. There's 8K left, and man, I don't want to put in 5K with kings and fold and not see his hand. I mean, I get that. But that's, again, we're just going back to like money. I mean, if you're playing 1-2, I don't think you'd be thinking like that. Like you put in 40, 160 left, you probably just get away from the hand. But I think you guys are just going back to the dollar signs and just thinking, 5K is a crap load of money.
No, but you're saying like call 3K and then fold the turn. Like, oh, that's real easy. I'll just put in 5K and then fold for like 8K more because now I'm pretty sure that I'm beat.
I'm not saying it's easy. I definitely agree it's freaking hard, and I can't say with certainty that I would fold either. But I'm saying you guys are thinking too much about the money already invested.
I'm not thinking about the money. But it's like you can't say.
You did say, I put in 2,500.
All right. Let's say 5x. We can say you can't put in like.
Yeah, I put in 130 bigs, and there's only 200 bigs left or something.
Yeah, there's 10x in the pot, and you're gonna fold for like 8x. Like it doesn't matter that it's $8,000. Like that doesn't really matter. Like it's just a number. I mean. Believe me, I don't think I think Nick's like kind of the point where he's not really thinking about it as money. He's thinking about it as chips, like he should be, right? I mean,
right. At like a 1-2 or 2-5 level, I might have been in that mindset, but now it's just
it's all chips. It's all chips. I mean, after the session, you're like, damn, that was $13,000. You think about it in dollars afterwards.
Then I think
right?
how much rent I could have paid, or what kind of car I could have bought, what vacation I could have went on.
Yeah, but during the session, you're just thinking of it as chips because I'm pretty sure Nick's at that point where it's not like he's not really thinking of the money.
I do think he thinks about it as chips like 99% of the time, but I do think Nick might have. I don't know, but it sounds like Nick might have seen like the dollar signs in this hand. Just because he's playing so deep. Even he says...
If I saw the dollar signs, then I think I would have leaned towards calling or folding.
Oh, okay.
Pre-flop. Right, and it was really like, what's 13,000, right? See you later. Let's put it in there. As I said, I can't control where my arm goes.
Like I said, I think the only time you really see the dollar signs is after the session. I mean,
but the one thing Nick said is, I didn't want to make it 3,500 and fold to a shove. So that kind of sounded to me like he was seeing dollars. Like he didn't want to put in that much money and then fold for like 9,000 more. Like like 3,500 is a crap load of money, and not even see a flop, right? So I think I'm right along those lines. The reason why Nick didn't want to do a standard 5-bet. So
yeah, I don't know what a standard 5-bet is because I've never been in that situation. Not even online. I mean,
probably like 2.5 times the 4-bet size, probably standard. Because you guys are, I think that'd be about right. And then he's in a spot where he pretty much has to shove or fold. So, but oh well, whatever. Lesson learned, whatever. So, I will say, again, another one from my personal experiences where I put in like 2,800 pre at 5-10 online with 2 kings. Kind of a similar thing. And I hated it too. Like, it was against a reg where I raised to 30, 40, I don't remember, under the gun. He makes it 110, I make it 250, or whatever. I think he just overshoved for like 3K, or I don't know. It went 500 and then 3K. I don't remember exactly how. Yeah. And he shoved and I tanked forever. Because I was just thinking, like, no one puts in 3K at 5-10 with less than aces. But I'm like, whatever, I have kings. Just clicking buttons. And he had ace-king. So, I hate to say, like, you should just fold kings there because I remember that hand. Because like Joe said, one of the memorable hands was when he lost aces versus kings twice. I had kings versus ace-king there. And I remember how the board rolled out. It came, like, 10 high, turn was an ace. So I was like cursing and yelling and like, like I was right. And I can't believe this guy's being rewarded. I'm being punished. But the river, I hit a king for the 1 out redraw. So that's why it was memorable because he hits his 2 outer or 3 outer, and I hit a.
All right, let's move on.
All right, so yeah, I think Nick, it just sucks. Whatever. But
sorry, Nick, man.
But you're a good enough player where you'll recoup that in no time.
I actually, in the 2 days, I've gotten half of it back, so I'm satisfied with that.
Good.
Okay, that's good. Well, Nick, we're going to have to boot you off because we're going to get a PLO guy on. There is a couple of other no-limit questions I had, but I'll get to them next time with you. So if you don't mind, we'll take another quick break, and we'll bring on John. I hope I'm saying his Beauprez. I hope I'm saying his last name right. He's a PLO guy, so some game where we're not as good and proficient as in. But thanks for joining us today, Nick.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, we're actually going to go over some PLO stuff today, and we have John Beauprez. Am I saying your last name right, John?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised that you got it right, actually. I was like, nice work.
You know what?
I couldn't even get it right.
I cheated, and I Googled Beauprez pronunciation. I typed
smart guy favorite.
Because I have no idea how to pronounce your last name before that.
So,
hey, what's up, John?
And this is my co-host Joe, and Joe, meet John. He's a PLO crusher. Do you still coach for Deuces Cracked?
Yeah, I do actually. I haven't made videos in a while. Mostly, I've just been making videos for the site that you've been mentioning. PLO Quick Pro. But I still do actually a lot of coaching. I've been doing it a couple years. I've had like over 150 students now. So
wow.
I would say I've got quite the track record.
Oh, nice. What's your site again?
It's ploquickpro.com. It's only been for about a year, but basically what it is like I said, I've been doing a lot of coaching, and since I was doing so much of it, I wanted to share it with other people. And I know that when I was learning PLO, there weren't very many good resources out there. So I kind of just streamlined my coaching program, turned it into something you can buy. If you visit the site, we've got some good free content, so definitely check it out.
I gotta say, John, I was reading this article you put up, Embrace the Variance.
Yeah.
And, like just recently I started playing PLO, and right when I first started playing it, I'm like, wow, I'm going to make $500,000 this year. Like,
it's the easiest game ever. What have I been playing the limit?
I'm going to make $1 million this year, like pretty easily. And then like my first, however many 20 sessions or something, like all the big pots I played, I ran like way, way, way below EV, like in every single pot that was like 6, 7 to 10K, like, and I'm like losing all the big ones, and like the small ones, like whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh man. And then I read this article. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good stuff. Like this guy really knows PLO. He understands the game. I mean,
sure.
So.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about PLO is, and that's one of the things that draws people to it, is it does make you feel kind of invincible when things are going well and everything's clicking. It's super fun to play, and I think that's one of the reasons why the games are softer. I think there is that draw to it. Fish love to play it. There is more action. Especially live. I mean, I when I first started coming to Vegas and how I got into poker was, of course, No Limit. And I remember the best strategy was like just play tight, and when you get a good hand, like you get paid off. This is an amazing game. Like you said, I'm going to be rich like in a couple of months because every time I get a good hand, I just get paid. But it seems like now when I go play like 2-5 or even 5-10 live, the games are actually much tighter than they used to be. So I think that actually the way that PLO plays now, it's more like No Limit played back in maybe like 2006, 2007, even earlier.
So you're saying the live PLO games are softer than the live No Limit games?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that it's even close.
Right. I know this article you wrote was for Bluff Magazine, and you talked about variance.
Yeah.
Can you touch up on that a little bit? It's just weird. Like, whenever I talk to people that play PLO, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's a good game because you're never in bad shape when you get it all in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, it's
That
not
is
quite
true.
that easy. It's not quite that easy, but yeah, of course, like you do flip coins a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like you said, like fish are kind of delusioned in the sense that, oh, if I get it in, I'm not going to be in horrible shape like I am in No Limit when guys are always showing up with sets or better pocket pairs.
Right.
I have 40-some% equity, 45% equity.
Sure.
So, and you touched on that in this article. So, can you talk about like how the variance affects like a person's mentality? You're saying in this article, like because of that, some people are delusioned into thinking they're running worse than they are, or they're running better than they are.
Yeah, well, I think part of that is actually the jury is still out on what is correct PLO play. That was one of the reasons why it was so hard for me to learn PLO in the beginning, and why I wanted to create my own PLO videos was because I would watch, for example, like a video by Vanessa saying, "Oh, you got to play tight. Like pocket pairs aren't good. All these different hand requirements are not very good." But then I'd watch a video by Stinger, and he's like going out of his mind, playing like half of hands and talking about a lot of other hands that could be good. So I think that part of why people don't really understand it and why there is more variance is because there's a lot of experimentation. And with No Limit, there's just so many great resources out there. For example, like your videos on card runners. There's a lot of good ebooks. It's just more like cut and dried what's good and what's not good. So I think that's one reason why there is more variance and why it's harder for people to deal with. And I think that a lot of players are still struggling with figuring out what is like standard variance and is what I'm doing even correct. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I remember seeing. I think Ben Lamb is a good friend of yours, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he had a good World Series of Poker, but I remember seeing on 2+2 he posted a graph of his PLO play.
I know exactly
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He ran something like 300,000 below EV or something.
Yeah. To be honest, I think of course, just like everything else in poker, I think it really depends on what games you're playing, how good your game selection is, and stuff like that. I have, I've seen graphs of, mid stakes and below of players with almost no variance, but of course, that's because they're very good players. I think that one reason you can have lower variance at like the lower stakes, especially online and I guess live too, is because the games are more passive. Decisions are easier. You're not constantly getting stacks in. If you're playing like mid stakes and above, the games are much more aggressive. So of course, like in any games that are more aggressive, you're going to have more variance. So I think honestly, it just kind of depends on your game selection, what kind of stakes you're playing. Yeah, like definitely. I'm sure Ben has been known to play some pretty big stakes. So definitely at the stakes that Ben was playing, I'm sure he experienced.
Well, I think variance caught up with him at the World Series last year. He can't really whine, right?
Yeah, I don't think Ben's feeling too bad about his results.
Yeah, because I remember that post, and he was whining. It almost sounded like he was whining, like, "Check out my graph. Nobody runs worse than me in PLO." I don't think he can whine anymore.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
I was just kind of googling your name. I don't think you play many tournaments, but I saw you had a second place finish in Colorado a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that tournament still haunts me a little bit. I really thought that I had that one in the bag. With those HPTs, generally towards the end, the structure's kind of bad. Stacks are pretty short, but I got some very good hands, and I thought that the final table was pretty soft. I knocked out everyone at the final table until I got heads up. And
for the last guy.
Yeah, and
That-
what I actually was like I had a 2-1 chip lead going into a heads up play, and I just didn't switch gears well enough to be honest. I thought I had a big edge, and I was kind of played a high variance style, and he got a couple of hands, and it was over pretty quick. And I think that's pretty inexcusable overall when the pay jumps are that big, and you do have a big edge over someone heads up for that much money. Because first was like 180,000, and second, which is what I got, was like 90 or 91,000. So definitely got to make sure you got to close it out when you're in that kind of situation.
You need to get lessons from Joe on how to knock out everybody. Remember, no, the NAPT, I went to go sweat him. He knocked out everybody. I think he knocked out everybody, right?
Yeah, everyone at the final table that was
Yeah,
running good, winning flips, and
right. He knocked out. I mean, there were some good players. Jason Mercier, Michael Binger. He knocked out everybody, which is amazing.
Jake Toole, what's his name online?
Right.
PSU Tennis. He was that kid knows his stuff. He was really good. I played with him the previous day. I was impressed by the way he played. But he was the first one out, so I was pretty happy about that because he knew how to play.
That's cool, man. Nothing's better than making a final table and destroying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you recommend? Like, I get a lot of like advice or questions from no limit players. Like, hey, I'm thinking of playing PLO. What do I need to know? Like, what would you say to a general question? I'm sure you get that a lot.
Yeah, I do get that a lot. I mean, it's tough to say because I think that it depends on what kind of knowledge you have and how good of a no limit player you are. From my experience, typically no limit players make a pretty good transition as far as like expert or very successful no limit players crossing over, because in the end, like, a lot of the theory is the same. What makes you a good no limit player is going to make you a good PLO player. From my experience, the players that have the easiest time transitioning are mixed game players and actually heads up no limit players. Heads up no limit players, I think, because they're used to the aggression, they're used to betting a lot without it, and I think mixed game players, for obvious reasons, they're used to playing a variety of games. And, one thing that I did learn, kind of referring back to the HPT score I had, ironically, when I got that score, I hadn't played a single hand of no limit for about 9 months. And then a couple of my friends were going to play this tournament in Colorado. Like, hey, you want to come play this tournament? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Fuck it, let's go play. And I ended up, doing very well and getting second. But what I realized was the time I took off from no limit and focusing on PLO really improved the way that I think about poker, and in the end, like, improved my no limit game a lot.
That's so. I've told this to so many people who are like struggling in no limit, and it's like, go play 2-4 limit hold'em. Go play, any other game. Go play any other game, and it really helps you think about poker in a different way. Especially 2-4 limit hold'em. I mean, you can find a million games of those around Vegas or whatever it is. And everyone complains like, oh, there's 5-6 people to every flop, and I'm like, good, that's what you want. Like, it teaches you, it teaches your brain to like think more about doing everything you do is for value. You know what I mean? It doesn't because in no limit you kind of get caught up in the bluffing, rebluffing game, things like that, and another thing you said, I think the biggest thing in PLO is I come from kind of like a mixed game background, so I think my adjustment was not too tough. But I think the biggest thing I've been noticing is like, I think position in PLO. I mean, it's important in every game of poker, but it may be the biggest in PLO.
Yeah,
I think position's more so important in that game than probably any other game of poker.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I think you're right. And honestly, going back to what you mentioned just a second ago, one of the reasons that I felt like my no limit game improved a lot is because in PLO, you really need to pay a lot more attention to board texture, and there's a lot more post-flop play. I feel like in no limit, you're really restricted by how powerful the hands are. And I don't know if we're getting to this later on, but maybe I'll mention it right now. Is one of the biggest differences between PLO and no limit is that hand values change a lot on later streets in PLO. With the nuts changing almost every street. And in no limit, hand values are much more static. There's a lot more like way ahead or way behind situations in no limit than there are in PLO. So I feel like, especially when you're in position and you get used to playing PLO, where you have the ability to rep a variety of hands and push people off hands later on, it does make you a lot more comfortable playing the turn and playing the river and getting used to bluff raising and getting some courage. Which and again,
that's huge. Like having backdoor draws, nut redraws, all those things are really big, really big.
Definitely,
and all the backdoor draws, because you're getting the best implied odds with those draws as well too.
Sure, absolutely.
You're usually getting paid off the biggest, I think.
Yeah, and from my experience, just playing, because I used to, again, like I said, I used to play a lot of No Limit. Someone who is like a good PLO player and has like a PLO style in No Limit is kind of tough to play against because typically a good PLO player will play pretty snug out of position, but absolutely go crazy in position. And when you're playing out of position against someone who isn't afraid to put in a lot of money with bluffs, isn't afraid to put in a lot of money with semi bluffs, is capable of representing hands, that can be very tricky to play. So. Anyhow.
I think it's
sticky is a good word.
I think I
I like
find it very interesting that a lot of your PLO talk has been about you're just talking about bluffing and representing different hands.
Sure.
And it's kind of a misconception amongst like new PLO players or people that aren't experienced. They just think, oh, you can't really bluff in PLO because everyone has 4 cards and people always have some kind of hand.
Yeah.
So you do think there's a lot of bluffing opportunities. We just have to be aware of them, right?
Yeah, well, and again, basically, I think that all PLO really is board texture and opponent tendencies. How successful you are and how much money you win is going to depend on how well, how in tune you are with the opponents and what they're capable of, and also how well you know the board textures and what they're representing. Of course, there is many situations and many different board textures that you really shouldn't bluff very much on, especially like the wetter boards, just because, as you mentioned, like people have 4 cards, so you don't want to be putting in a lot of money with no pot equity, with little fold equity, of course. So, right. Again, like there are boards that are very good for bluffing because people can be against the range.
I've been dabbling some low stakes 1, 2, 2, 4 PLO online. So
yeah.
I think on paired boards I've been check raising a lot. On monotone flops, check raising.
Right.
It's because I assume those are decent boards to bluff.
Absolutely, that's very effective. And of course, you have to adjust a little bit to the players once they start to pick up on that. But again, like I think that there is a big difference between like when I talk about a lot of semi-bluffing, when I talk about a lot of bluffing, when I talk about using a lot of aggression, I'm of course referring more to like shorthanded online play. Now in live, it does play very, very differently. Most of the games that are live here in Vegas are full ring, and in general, like it's going to be pretty bad to like go out of your way to bluff. Most hands are like 3 or 4 way. You will run into the nuts a lot, and you're definitely going to lose money if you're constantly bluffing at pots when people actually have it.
Well, the thing with bluffing is, it's pretty rare that you're ever like just on a total bluff in PLO with like 0 equity. Like a lot of times, I always say this in all forms of poker. It's just like, yeah, it's a lot easier when your hand actually does get there and you're betting for value.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
poker's a lot easier when your hand gets there and you don't have to bluff. Like, it's the spots. It's the spots where, and like you said, it's all about board texture. I think when the best time to bluff is.
Definitely. Yeah, and I mean, and going back to sort of what I mentioned, what we talked about earlier, like one way that I feel a little bit handcuffed in No Limit is like against a tight player, for example, like it's going to be hard to push them off hands because they've just got such a strong hand and they're not going to fold it. But in PLO, I feel so much more comfortable calling with almost any 4 cards against a tight player because that they've got big pairs, they've got broadways, they have like the generic top 15 to 20% of the deck. So I know which boards I'm going to win on because I'm going to call in position and I'm going to rep whatever it is I don't think that you can have on these boards.
Yeah.
So you're saying you can bluff a lot more by repping a wider range of hands.
Sure.
No limit, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, of course, it also matters a lot how many players are in the pot. I mean, heads up in position, you can go pretty ballistic. But, of course, like the more multi-way a pot is, the more the less position matters. And the more straightforward you have to play in general.
Right.
I think that's a real good point about the tight players. Like certain players you can sit there and just draw to like bottom pair and just try to make 2 pair because he has aces. Like
Sure.
it doesn't. You know what I mean? It's not like when someone else, if they were to pot it on a certain board, you're just like you're like, oh, you have to fold because he probably has a ton of equity. But like some people are just pretty tight, and he has like a certain, like you can draw to like whatever, like a bottom pair type hand or something similar, where you're just trying. What you have to beat pretty much. Where in No Limit, it really is. It's kind of like I've become like anti No Limit. Like now that I've been playing so much PLO. I mean, PLO is like such a true form of poker, and it's great.
Yeah, to be honest, like I'll just say it, I really don't like No Limit very much. All my friends really make fun of me because whenever, they come into town like, let's play No Limit. I'm like, do I have to? Like, come on, you guys learn PLO. You're going to like it so much more, I promise. I mean, and I'm of course very biased. I play a lot of PLO. I coach PLO. I'm obviously...
Do you play PLO 8? Do you play PLO 8, John?
I've like dabbled in a very limited amount. Like I'd
Oh,
get,
man.
I've heard it's great though. Honestly, like
Spread those wings a little bit, man. I mean, you'll absolutely love it.
That's what
I
Joe's
would
been playing all the
absolutely
time lately. He's been playing it all the time lately.
Well,
where
we
he
play
lives.
half high, half high low, but the high low part is PLO 8 is great.
That's what I've heard.
I think it's better than it's much better than PLO high. I think. I mean,
Well, I'm sure the game is much softer than PLO high too.
Probably.
You're going two ways every hand, so people are already making mistakes going one way, so now they can double their mistakes going two ways.
Yeah,
not understanding ranges and hand strengths.
I've heard some pretty serious legends of how good the PLO 8 games are. So, my plan after the series right now, I'm just focusing on PLO high. Series is coming up. I want to make sure the game is sharp. As you guys saw with Ben and of course like a lot of other friends, like if you do well at the series, like it can set you up pretty nicely. So I want to make sure that I've got that taken care of. So right now I'm not in the learning mode of a new game, but I'd like to check it out after the series.
Has his success kind of like made you want to play more tournaments? 'Cause I know you're good friends with them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, I do like no-limit tournaments. I just can't really grind no-limit tournaments. But they are very exciting, and I do think that they're really fun. In fact, like I would much prefer to play a no-limit tournament than a PLO tournament. PLO tournaments actually kind of suck. Well, they're full ring, number one. I just don't really like playing full ring PLO very much unless like I have to. And also, I do like in no limit tournaments. Like I feel like I'm better at them. This is funny. I've never cashed in a PLO tournament live ever in my entire life. I've probably played like 30 or 35 of them. But for whatever reason, I don't have the patience or I don't really have the theory figured out quite yet. So, but yeah, I mean, seeing Ben do well, of course, makes me want it a lot more. And last summer, I thought that he set a really great example for everyone by being more disciplined and focusing on his work instead of like giving into temptation and partying and
during the World Series.
Yeah, definitely.
People actually do that during the World Series.
Occasionally, I guess that's the word.
So where do you play around town?
I like to play at Aria. I mean, I'll play where I've played Bellagio, Aria, Wynn, Venetian. It just kind of depends where the PLO runs.
What do you think of the game since Black Friday?
They seem pretty good. I mean, actually, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that it's really affected like the PLO games that much. I think they're like overall pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually have a couple of hand questions I wanted to ask you about.
Fire away.
Okay.
Oh, this should be
so. I was talking to one of my friends, and he is playing PLO, and this is our friend Adam F. Joe, when I talked to him the other night. And, so there's a raise pre-flop, gets like 4 callers, and he has ace, king, queen, X with like queen high clubs, and the flop comes ace, jack, 10 with like 2 spades.
Okay, and he was in position, you said?
Oh, he was in the small blind, so he flops the nuts.
Yeah.
So he checks to the pre-flop raiser, and he said if he or another guy bet, he's gonna just check fold the turn, or he's just gonna check fold the flop. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you ever check fold the nuts?
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't do that.
Well, his argument was.
I mean,
his argument was versus certain players, it's right to fold the nuts on the flop because he's saying they're free rolling you. Is there ever a spot where you fold the nuts on the flop because you think the guy's like has the same hand and free rolling you?
I mean, honestly, just like anything else, and I think Joel agree with me. I mean, I think it just comes down to opponent tendencies, of course, and like how deep you are and what you think that they're capable of. If you can only put them on the nuts, well, I think the best play is, of course, not to re-raise. I mean, call and represent spades, or call and represent a boat.
There's so many different. I've never folded the nuts on the flop. The only time I was pretty close, I had like 4 or 5 on like a 3, 6, 7 board with 2 diamonds, and I had no diamond redraw or anything. But I like check called 1 bet, and then like I was able to get away from that. But I know the board's gonna get ugly at some point. Like I mean, you pretty much you can't fold. I mean, the nuts can always like remain the nuts, like pretty much. You're never.
Well, that seems hard to do with that hand, though, on that board.
Yeah, I know. That's the only time I was thinking. I'm like, man, I've heard about these times where people actually fold the nuts on the flop, and I was like, I've never done it, but this would probably be like the only time I might consider it. Like,
It really depends on the board. I would fold the nuts in maybe like a three-way pot on a board like you were just talking about. If I had like 4-5 and it went bet raise,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
were
but
like
not
tight
for more than
players, then
that.
I think that it's different. But again, like I actually think that's a pretty good spot where your friend had the king queen. I mean, you can just call, and if a spade rolls off, I'm going to lead. If the board pairs, I'm probably going to lead as well. And the other thing that's nice is we do have the ace blocker, so it's even less likely that he has a set of aces. He's probably not going to bet a set of jacks into that many players. So I think that's a pretty good spot to just call and float.
Okay, so pretty much we're never folding the nuts on the flop.
Not to one bet now, definitely not. And I mean, I just, especially if it's going to go heads up, which I think that a lot of times it will be. I actually played an interesting hand live. I'll share with you. And you'll be surprised, like how often. Well, I'll just get into the hand and you'll see what I mean. So I was playing this hand live. I don't remember exactly the pre-flop action, but I believe it was a 2-5-10 or 5-10, either one. And like I said, I don't remember the pre-flop action, but I was in middle position and I had a Jack 10 8-6, I believe it was, double suited. And this guy on the button was like this crazy guy from London. And anyway, well, the flop was 7-8-9 rainbow, so I flopped the nuts, right? And there was 50 in the pot, and I believe I led 40 or 50. And folded the button, and he raised for the full pot. And so this should always be 10 jack, right? Like no one really raises anything but 10 jack on a 7-8-9 rainbow board. You know what I mean? Especially when it's that multi-way. And we were pretty deep. And again, this goes back to what I was talking about, where if he's obviously representing 10 jack, like why would you re-raise? You're only going to get it in as a chop. You should try to blow them off the pot.
And where he has better redraw equity, like
yeah, and
yeah, exactly.
He's deep and like we're in position. So anyway, well, like I think I even had like 1 or 2 backdoor flush draws. And so anyhow, well, like I called and the turn was a 9, like the turn was a 9, and like maybe I didn't have exactly Jack 10 8 5, but it gave me trips. It doesn't really matter what my exact hand was. Like I turned trips with the Jack 10, okay, and I led, and he called, okay, and actually before he called, he looked at the dealer and he said, "What's the maximum amount I can raise?" So, Joe, like from your experience in this kind of situation, like what kind of read would you have? Like, what is that?
like he never has anything when he, I mean, unless it's like he doesn't want you to bet anymore. I mean, pretty much when he says that, it's like he's trying to slow you down.
Yeah,
the guys that grab like a big stack of chips and then they like call only, like those are the guys I always ISO raise pre-flop and things like that. Like the guys that are like acting like they're gonna raise pre-flop or
right. Yeah, that was exactly how I interpreted it, and I thought, like you said, he was just trying to get like a cheap river or trying to slow me down. So anyway, like but he just called my turn, but I bet like I can't remember exactly what it was, but then actually the river double paired the board, so the board was like 7 8 9 9 7, and I thought it was like, of course, like the perfect time to bluff. So I bet 600 or 700 on the river, I believe it was, and he called, and I just assumed that we were chopping, and I turned over 10 jack, and he's like, "It's good." And he folds.
Oh wow!
So he didn't even he literally. I mean, and that's what I'm saying is why you would never like just fold the nuts. Of course, like one bet. You don't know what like these players are doing. I mean, that's also obviously like a much different board than the one you talked about. But yeah, I mean,
I agree. There's interesting spots where you can just like call but pretty much never fold the nuts to one bet on any flop.
No, unless it's extremely wet and you have a good read on the player. I mean, that's
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm back. My computer crashed briefly. Just crazy, but whatever. I missed a hand, but I assume it was a good hand.
It's all right, man. Me and Joe are holding it down.
All right. And I had another question. If you're done talking about that hand.
Yeah, let's hear it.
This is a hand posted on our forum, and Joe and I actually had different opinions on this, but I thought it was close. I'm probably wrong though. The more I think about it,
because I'm usually right, John. I'm not sure if you.
Sure.
Okay, they're playing 135 PLO.
That's odd.
Yeah, and 1500 effective, and there's a raise and 3 callers, and our hero on the button has ace ace deuce 3 with 3 hearts, including the ace of hearts in his hand. Okay. Before we get to the flop, is that a 3-bet or just a flat on the button?
The calling is fine. If I had stronger aces, I would always 3-bet, but I think that it's actually pretty fine. It's fine to call there. I mean, you're in position again, like deeper. And the other thing about live is it's like live no limit. Like whenever you 3-bet in live no limit, everyone's always like ace king. Do you have ace king? Do you have aces? Like they always put you at the top of your range. So I think that especially when you're that deep, it's okay to just call when people are going to put you on your hand. Especially like when you flop a set of aces, it's more deceptive in a single raised pot. And something that I've talked about with like a lot of students, and I think that you guys are obviously familiar with, is that like the deeper the stacks are, the more important it is to have like the nuttier hands that can cooler someone, so that you can get your money in amazing with deeper stacks. So I think that's a pretty good argument for just peeling with those below average aces.
Okay, so our hero flatted with ace ace deuce three hearts,
Mm-hmm.
and the flop comes 10 9 8 with 2 hearts.
Okay.
Let me
There
try
was
to.
140. Yeah, there was 140 in the pot,
Okay,
and
yeah.
both blinds checked, and I think it was I'm not sure if it was the pre-flop raiser or someone else, but like an under the gun guy
It
bets
was
out.
somebody else. Under the gun checks.
Someone
Under the-
else leads
yeah.
for the pot.
Middle
Okay.
position bets 140. Everyone falls to him on the button.
Yeah.
With the blinds and the under the gun behind.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, so he pretty much has aces with the nut flush draw, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
has 3 hearts in his hand.
Sure.
On 8,
So-
9, 10.
Well, so what do you do there? And you guys are 1500. It started the hand before the hand 1500 effectively.
Yeah, well, I think actually the most important thing to consider is if he's going to fold on board pairs. If he's not going to fold on board pairs, then it's probably better to just fold, because I don't think that you're going to get like a ton of value if the turn's like a heart.
That's what I said. I don't think, like, you're not getting any value really, or I mean, you might get some value if you do catch a heart
Yeah.
on the turn, but I don't think you're getting a ton of value.
Yeah, and like overall, I mean, the quickest way to lose money in poker, especially PLO, and I think it's a mistake that a lot of players make, definitely no limit players, is calling to give up on the hand, later on, like just building up pots to give up on them. I typically don't like to call when most of the time I'm going to give up on the turn. So if you think about it this way, like, so what, there's like, I guess there's 8 hearts and then what, like 9 board pairs that are possible. So that's like 17 turn cards that we could potentially win on, only 8 for sure. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's close, but I could see an argument for both ways. If you think that he's going to fold on board pairs, I guess that's one thing, but I don't know. It's close. I think that folding is just fine.
Are you saying the board pairs you're essentially bluffing, like turning
Oh,
your hand
definitely.
into
I think
bluff?
that I think that you have to make it profitable. I definitely don't think that if you're just calling for sheer like this is the odds I'm getting, and when I hit I'm getting paid, like, because I really just don't think that you're ever going to get like more. It's possible that you don't even get one street of value when you get there, and then too often
exactly.
like call the flop and then just fold on the turn when he bombs it.
Yeah, he could have like king, queen, jack, and either he's just check folding the turn if he still get, or if you get there,
Yep.
for one bet. It's the same thing in no limit. It's like sometimes you're calling with like a flush draw, but you're like planning, or you're calling with a straight draw, but you're planning on also bluffing like a flush draw as well if the flush card comes in. So now you're like counting your outs like that. And I think that's a good point with the board pairs too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
never-
if I had some kind of blocker, maybe like I don't know, if I had like a 10 blocker, like definitely with a gutter, like I would absolutely peel.
Yeah.
But maybe if like a 10 block would be more of a peel, but I think just in general, like I think it's fine to just fold that.
Yeah, see, this is the stuff like I haven't really considered. I don't think most players. I mean, good no limit players know when to turn certain made hands into bluffs, but that's a spot where I probably wouldn't have considered, like, if the board pairs, I can use it, pretty much turn my hand into a bluff.
I mean, it's just that's the thing is like he so clearly has queen jack. Like you're not going to get. How are you going to make profit with the hand? That's like the big question, right? In any cash game, like your profit has to come from somewhere. So if like you're not going to get any money when you get there, but you're always going to like give up when he bombs the turn. I mean, that just sounds like a terrible play.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good enough.
Yeah.
All right. Joe, you've played some PLO hands. Do you have any questions for John?
I mean, I think the interesting thing with PLO hands is like when you're telling bad beats or when you're like thinking about it, it's like, I mean, when I tell him to like my wife or something, she'll be like, "Oh, well, he had a pretty good hand too," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't get like in these 60-40 situations too often, or you don't." I really like the Embrace the Variance article, like I said, because it's just
Nice.
like, like you're in so many spots where it's like you can't really explain like how bad of a beat it was, but like when you're getting in this big of a pot, like, and you have him nutted like a better draw, better pair, or whatever it is, or like a bigger wrap and a better flush draw versus his lower wrap or whatever it is, like things like that, and you lose those pots, it's just like, those are like so big.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of questions I haven't really
Well,
thought of.
I have one more.
Yeah, shoot.
And this is always like deeper stack play. Deep stack play is hard. No limit and PLO. That's why we were just talking about. I don't know if you were listening before, but our
Yeah, it
friend
was.
Nick got in 13K. It's hard when you're playing super deep in any game.
It is
Right.
hard, and the other thing is what one thing that he mentioned that I could definitely relate to is how like once you separate yourself from the hand afterwards, you're like, oh my god, obviously that was terrible. But when you're in the hand, especially if it's higher stakes, and you're playing for potentially like a $26,000 pot, sometimes it clouds your thoughts and you can't really think straight. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you in
Definitely.
PLO. I know like it's easy to flop the nuts more so than no limit. And no limit, if you ever have the nuts, it's never incorrect to just, no matter how deep you are, to get it in at any point. So if your opponent's willing to get it in, I mean, you can put in 10,000 big blinds with the nuts at any point. I shouldn't say that. The guy could have a redraw, I guess. But
yeah, it just kind of depends. And like I was saying earlier, I mean, I would prefer to like if it's obvious that he has that hand, well, let's try to bluff him off it.
But I mean, it's more likely. It's way less likely you're making a mistake if you put in like an infinite amount in no limit. But is there any point in PLO where you kind of have to be cautious and like a certain number of BBs where you don't want to put in too much with the nuts at some point?
Well, I think that's like sort of a vague question. I mean, obviously, it like kind of depends.
Okay, well, here's an example. If you flop top set, so, like say you have pocket jacks and the flop comes jack, 10 deuce with two spades.
Yeah.
Like, how much is too much? Like,
Well,
I just got in that very same hand recently, JK, and the answer is I actually looked up the equities and I was 50.03 against, because we got it all in for like 4K a piece, and I was 50.03 and he had ace king queen 7 with a nut flush draw.
right.
So we were exactly flipping. So the answer is like, I mean, how much, right? Like infinite amount with top set there, I would think.
Right. Well,
I don't know if you can say infinite. Is that the answer? An infinite amount?
Well, I think actually it matters a lot on what the exact board texture is, and I also think it matters if you're in position or out of position. The way that I look at it, especially on a board like that, a set of jacks is just another draw. I mean, it's the nuttiest draw, but you're drawing to a full house. I mean, the board texture is going to change a lot. So it's hard to say. I think that in position, I would always just call. If like I got check raised there and I had just a bare set of jacks, I would always just call. Out of position, of course, like you want to be the key is to like realize your equity and not make mistakes on later streets. So of course, like a set of jacks has equity against anything. So if possible, like I would prefer to just stick in a set of jacks so that I don't make as many mistakes against our opponent. But in position, I would typically always peel. And I mean, the thing is that you have to remember, and going back to what I mentioned earlier, how playing PLO improved my no limit game. I think it's important to look at like one thing that I didn't used to look at in no limit was SPRs, and in PLO it's so much more about SPRs because it is like a pot limit game. So it's like, for example, if most single raised pots are the SPR is like anywhere from 8 to 13. Well, when the SPR is 10, you need 48% equity to like stack off and get stacks in to break even. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it.
So I mean, if the SPR is like 10 and you feel like flipping coins and you have a big draw, well then yeah, like go ahead and stick it in. But if you think there's more ways for you to either realize your equity or play more profitably on later streets, then you might have.
Okay, so in position, tend to peel. Out of position, tend to stick it in. Okay, that's
How
pretty
much
interesting.
how much limping do you see like in PLO in relation to like no limit? I know, it seems like the game I play, like there's a couple guys that are just like me and maybe like two other guys that are just like everyone's limping and waiting for us to pot it. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like everyone's just limping and waiting for us to like, pot it. And like it's me and I can think of like two other guys and they're the toughest players in the game. They're like,
Right.
They're always taking advantage of position and they're always using aggression,
Right.
And I think those things do kind of transfer over from no limit position and aggression, obviously. But yeah, like how much limping do you really see in maybe online games? Because I haven't really played in any online PLO.
I mean, you see tons of limping live, like tons and tons and tons of limping live. I think that there is some merit to limping in certain situations. I think that And a lot of like I've told you how loose the live games typically play. I mean, I think that there's definitely some merit to like seeing some cheap flops if you know that like your open is not going to change the number of players post flop. I think that limping and seeing like a cheap flop is like absolutely fine.
See, I don't know. I don't really agree with that. I think there's a lot of big advantage to like getting control of the pot. Unless, I guess you're right. If it doesn't really change the number of players, if you're still going to take the flop like 5 ways, like what's the point of putting in more money with an inferior hand? I do kind of agree with that. Because position won't matter, aggression won't matter if you do have just an inferior hand with that many players in.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, I would never open limp. The only times I would ever perhaps like open limp would be maybe in like a full ring game from like early position. But shorthanded, I would never limp. Sometimes I would limp behind, but never open limp. I think there's like definitely a very big difference between open limping and limping behind.
But like, how much of that did you see online? Like, I know you played some of the online games.
Yeah.
Was there much open limping at all?
By fish, not. By fish, but not by like anyone who knows what's going on.
I guess it's the same with not live PLO, live no limit.
Okay, before we wrap it up, I had a couple of viewer questions, just personal stuff.
Let's hear it.
Someone's asking, were you a host on a different poker show at a different time?
Was I hosting a different poker show? No.
Okay, and a couple of people are curious about your online screen name. Are you willing to divulge that or not?
I mean, I haven't played online in a while. On Full Tilt, I used to play under David D'Angelo. So.
Okay, all right. What was that again?
David D'Angelo.
David D'Angelo. Okay, and do you still have a coaching where's your coaching profile up? Or do you still have one?
Yeah, I do. It's on Deuces Cracked. It's under my name, Casino Crime, with K's, like Kasino Crime, Krime.
Okay, and what was the name of the website again?
PLOquickpro.com.
Yeah, I checked it out. It's, I want to pay for it to improve my game, but
sure.
Much PLO I'm going to be playing. I just don't see.
Yeah, that's good. And honestly, we've been working very hard on getting a new site up. It's got a lot more free content to give away, and also some new content that me and a couple of other players have been working on, including Ben and Jared Blesnick. That should be coming out here in just a couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for it.
Good stuff, John.
Yep. Yeah, we really appreciate having you on today. Do you have a Twitter handle too that people can follow you on?
Yeah, it's just at J Beauprez, JBeauprez. And I have a question for you guys, actually. Where did you get that music that you guys are playing in the beginning? I was like, I opened the browser and I was like, where's this music coming from? What is it? They're talking about like poker hands. Like, what artist is this?
I wondered the same thing. It's from the guys here at Quad Jacks. I mean, it's great, great music.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it is. Who do you know who it is specifically, John?
I don't know. I can't take credit for it. We'd have to ask guys over at Quad Jacks.
It is great music. It's so funny.
I was like, this is unbelievable. This should be like.
Oh, rubbing on my titties.
Yeah, I was like, because I told my mom, I was like, Mom, check it out. I'm like doing this interview. Like, you should check it out. And then I was like listening to the lyrics, like imagining my mom like listening to it. I'm like, oh man, this is terrible. This is a terrible idea.
Okay, good stuff, John. Thanks for coming on today. So this is another episode of Cash Plays brought to you by Stack'em. And as always, you can always follow Joe Tehan at Joe Tehan on Twitter and me at Nicolak Poker on Twitter. And you guys are welcome to comment or send any questions, hand histories to John at Stack'emCoaching.com or JoeTPoker@gmail.com. So this is our show for today. And thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks a lot, guys.
I hope he 3-bets me right here, cause I'm a 4-bet him, and I know he know that I can 4-bet lights when he 5-bet jams. Well, I got aces, go on suckers, raise it up, yeah, I 3-bet you, watch your fold it up, 30 to 40, that awkward set, you don't know how to play it, so I'm